So next topic we'll discuss about DRS. Next cluster level feature. Okay. So normally if this is a cluster, if here like RAM and CPU, let's say RAM or CPU utilization is high and here maybe it's low, okay, and one of the host is less, another host it is high. In case if you are trying to power on a virtual machine, if that will power on here, okay, this host utilization will go to up to 100%. Now, once the host is 100% utilized or beyond 100%, the performance issues will start. ESX host will not be able to provide memory and CPU to the virtual machines. There will be slowness in these virtual machines. Virtual machines will perform slowly. To avoid that, here if you see RAM or CPU utilization is very less. Here it is high, and there is some slowness, performance issues on the virtual machines. Okay. To avoid these issues, we have to manually vMotion from one host to another host. If it is one cluster, we will be monitoring. So we'll go to cluster, go to host tab, and here we can see which host is highly utilized and which host is less utilized. Okay, start it out, top to bottom or bottom to top. So we can identify which host is highly utilized here. If there are hundreds of clusters, and frequently they will be increasing. So when the virtual machines are in use, the usage will keep varying. Okay, almost we need 3-4 guys always to check the performance only, and vMotion from one host to another host. It is vMotion, completely live migration. Okay. So there will be no impact on the virtual machines, but still we need some dedicated person, 2-3 guys always to check the cluster usage and move here and there. Okay, that will be a difficult thing. It's not feasible option. Always keep checking the clusters only. You need 2-3 guys if there are hundreds of clusters. To avoid that, VMware has developed a feature called DRS. If you enable DRS feature here, hosts are added in the vCenter. This is vCenter database. So where all the inventory information will be stored. All the clusters, host information will be stored here. So once you enable a feature called DRS here on the cluster, in the vCenter database, a configuration file will be created. Drs configuration file. Drs configuration file will be created. What it does, it will continuously collect the RAM and CPU metrics from every host. From each of the ESXi host within this cluster, it will collect memory and CPU utilization, and it will compare. It will have that algorithm to compare where is high utilization and where is low utilization. If there is any difference is noticed, high versus very low, then it will try to vMotion from highly utilized host to the less utilized host as per the definition here. So DRS will automatically vMotion from highly utilized host to the less utilized host, so that we will not go to performance issue stage. So it's right 90% utilized. Here it is some 40% utilized. Once the DRS vMotion from VMs from here to here, it will reduce around 70%. It will increase around 60%. Now we will not experience any performance issues. So it will try to avoid performance issues by vMotioning the VMs from high utilized host to the less utilized host. Clear? It will try to vMotion VMs from highly utilized host to the less utilized host. It is a completely vMotion, so there is no business impact. Okay. So that load will be balanced across the cluster. Few people, when someone asks like what is DRS, they'll be saying it's like a load balancing feature in just a simple word. But don't say like that. Even if it is the same feature, but you need to elaborate completely what it does. Whenever an ESXi host is running out of memory and CPU, it will try to vMotion from highly utilized host to the less utilized host. That's the DRS functionality. So that the performance issues will be avoided. Yeah, it's recorded. It's on. Okay. Clear? So performance issues will be avoided by doing vMotion here. So it's called DRS. We'll see the purpose of this vMotion. Purpose of this DRS is automation of vMotion. It's basically load balancing feature. Purpose is to maintain the load balance across the cluster. Then minimum requirements. All cluster requirements, because it's a cluster feature and it is completely depends on vMotion task. So all vMotion requirements should be satisfied. And you should not say like if someone asks what are the minimum requirements for DRS, you should not say all vMotion requirements and all cluster requirements. You have to elaborate them. Okay, shared storage, cluster with minimum 2 hosts, same network settings, same CPU family and generation. So that some 3-4 requirements you can say. Fine. And how to enable? So this will not be a regular work on cluster. Configure tab, vSphere DRS. Edit, enable. Okay, go to cluster, configure tab, cluster, configure, vSphere DRS, edit. It will be like this. Just tap it here and say OK. That's it. DRS is enabled, and in case of highly utilized host, it will automatically vMotion from one host to another host. It's all about DRS. Okay. Any confusion or questions here? Here, we will not have any control on the vMotion. It can pick any virtual machine and migrate here and there. And what if there is a virtual machine with applications which are very critical for which doesn't support vMotion? There is one virtual machine which doesn't support vMotion. But if you enable DRS, it can select any virtual machine and migrate here and there. For some reason, if you select this virtual machine and migrate from here to here, the application which is running here will not support vMotion. You are trying to vMotion, so it will stop working. Okay, so it's a vMotion sensitive, like it doesn't support vMotion, and you are trying to vMotion now. So application which is running inside this machine will stop working. That will be unnecessary business outage. Okay, to avoid that, VMware has given some control on these vMotions. So those are defined under DRS automation levels. Very, very important. What are DRS automation levels and how they work? There are two things, right? If you observe DRS functionality, there are two things. One is need to identify where is high utilization and where is low utilization. Next thing is, if there is high utilization and low utilization is identified, it has to vMotion from highly utilized host to the less utilized host. Based on these two things, identification and taking an action. Monitoring, need to collect the data and analyze the data, where is high and where is low, and take an action. vMotion VMs from highly utilized host to the less utilized host. Based on that, three automation levels are designed. Manual automation level. Here, monitoring part is manual. We need to do manually collect the information about where is high and where is low utilization. If there is high utilization is identified, we have to manually vMotion. So it's almost like DRS is off only. If you set the automation level to manually auto, DRS level to manual auto, it's almost like DRS is off only. Cluster will not calculate the utilization and cluster will not do vMotion. We have to manually calculate and manually vMotion. How to manually identify? Go to cluster, go to host tab and see manually here where is high and where is low in terms of memory and in terms of CPU here. We have to verify manually. If there is highly utilized host, this is highly utilized. And if you want to vMotion, go to that host, check the virtual machines, click on CPU, which one is using high memory and high CPU. Try to migrate this from here to the host which is less utilized. Okay, we can vMotion here. Clear? Now you should be able to balance the load. Check which host is highly utilized. Cluster, host tab. Here you can see in terms of memory and CPU which one is highly utilized and which is very low. Okay, decide first. Let's say 242 ESXi1. Okay, 242 ESXi1. Select 240. Go to Virtual Machines tab. Click on CPU or memory. Short it out. You can find which one is using high memory and CPU, and then right click, migrate vMotion to the ESXi1. Right now here some compatibility issue, but normally within a cluster that you will not feel any compatibility issues. So you can click on finish. Okay, migrate manually. You have to identify and manually you have to vMotion. But it is almost like off. Continuously we will be checking. Okay, 2-3 guys will be always enough to find the cluster level usage itself. Okay, but you have so many applications, you can put all in one cluster and enable DRS manual automation. If you set to manual automation, what is the advantage then? We will have full control on these vMotions. Here and there vMotions, it will not happen. Okay, it will not happen the vMotions here and there. But when you are trying to power on a VM, okay, it will give you the recommendation. Recommendation to power on a new virtual machine. If you are powering on a new virtual machine in this cluster, it will give you to recommend where is low utilization so that you can place VM on that host. You can manually decide that also here. Instead of manually deciding which is low, I have to power on that host. Okay. It will automatically show you where to power on. Okay. So I'll set it to go to edit settings, manual, right? Set it to manual. Okay. Once you set to manual, when you are trying to power on a virtual machine, it will give this recommendation, power on recommendation. Okay. If you power on this virtual machine on 240, the load is balanced instead of any other ESXi host in this cluster. That's the meaning. If you right click, power on, it will give you the power on recommendation, where to power on, so that load will be balanced. Clear? Next automation level is partially automation. Fine. So cluster will collect the resource utilization and we have to manually vMotion. It is also almost like DRS is off only. Okay. It is also almost like DRS is off. It will just calculate where is high and where is low. It will give us the recommendation where to move the VM. So we have to manually vMotion VM. This is also almost like DRS is off. Go to edit, set it to partially automated, click on OK. Okay, partially automated. DRS automation level, partially automated. In this cluster, if you try to power on, it will also give you the power on recommendation. I think there is only one host, it will automatically select it. If there are multiple, it will give you the power on recommendation and also vMotion recommendation also. It will automatically go and verify where is high and where is low, and it will give you recommendation here under the monitoring vSphere DRS recommendations. Here we can see. Okay, right now there is only one cluster, one host. Okay, it will not give you any recommendation. Fine. So here it will show which VM you have to migrate from which host to which host, so that load will be balanced. Fine. So it will give you recommendation which VM you have to migrate from which host to which host, so that load will be balanced. Here you don't need in manual, right? If you go to host tab, we have to manually decide from which VM, from which host to which host you have to migrate, so the load will be balanced. Here, if it is partially auto, it will give you recommendation about which VM you have to migrate from which host to which host, so that load will be balanced. You don't need to manually vMotion. Here you can see apply recommendations. If you click on this apply recommendations tab, they will be automatically migrated. But you know which VMs will be vMotion. That means vMotions will be under your control. Which VM you are migrating, you will come to know. If you feel that VM has a sensitive application, we can skip that also. Here checkbox will be there. You can remove that checkbox, then apply recommendation. Okay. So that is also possible with partial automation. So it will give you power on recommendation. And second one, placement of the VMs will be done by DRS. So you have to manually vMotion. It is also almost like DRS is off. If you are not checking that recommendations and if you are not involving in applying the recommendations, there will be performance issues. If you leave like that, there will be performance issues. Here also manual interaction is needed, but vMotion will be under your control. And fully automation. Both are automatic. Cluster only as per definition. As per definition we discussed. Cluster itself will identify where is high and where is low utilization, and cluster itself will vMotion from highly utilized host to the less utilized host. Okay. FIT fully automation. So cluster itself will automatically identify where is high and where is low and automatically vMotion VMs. If it is fully automation. Partially auto. Cluster will identify the utilization, but we have to manually vMotion here and there. Manual. Monitoring is manual, vMotion is also manual. In first two cases, it's almost like its DRS is off only. Fine. Any question from three? Very, very important. Interview questions, they will be asking what are DRS automation levels, how they work. In simple words, you can say manual automation. We have to manually identify where is high and where is low utilization and manually vMotion. Partial auto. Cluster will identify where is high and low utilization and we can apply the recommendation if needed. Fully automation. Cluster will automatically identify where is high and where is low and we can, cluster itself will automatically vMotion here and there. We don't need to involve here anything. Okay. Which one will you recommend as an administrator?
Yeah.
Fully automation is recommended one. Okay. If VMs doesn't have any vMotion sensitive applications, fully automation is recommended. If there are like 20 to 30 virtual machines which doesn't support vMotion, put a separate cluster. All 20 VMs together in one cluster you can place. Let's say if all VMs supports vMotion, only one virtual machine doesn't support vMotion. For that purpose, we don't need to put any manual or partial. We can set it to fully automation, but we can disable VM only on that virtual machine. Okay. If there are 20 to 30 virtual machines which doesn't support vMotion, create a separate cluster, two host cluster, and set it to manual or partial so that they will not be vMotion. If there is one or two virtual machines only there, they doesn't support vMotion, you can set it to fully automation, but we can disable DRS only on those two VMs. We'll see that also. It's very important for interview point of view. Go to configure tab, select VM overrides. Click on plus symbol. Let's say I'm selecting this virtual machine and this virtual machine. DRS. Set it to manual, or you can set it to disable also. They will not vMotion. Okay. See, these two virtual machines, DRS is manual, and all other machines, we'll see what is the level partial, right? We'll set it to fully also. Now, cluster is fully automated, and VMs are manual. Okay, if there is only one or two VMs doesn't support vMotion, we can disable vMotion on those particular virtual machines from the VM override section. From here, set it to manual. Okay, and in case of HA also, we can set it to high priority. We have to enable HA first. Let's say those are the virtual machines should be powered on first. We can set them to power on here. HA restart priority also we can set. Fine. Okay. So this VM should restart first, this VM second, this VM third, like you can set priority. Fine. Any question with respect to DRS levels?
Hello.
Yes.
How to identify that which VM is supporting, which VM is not supporting DRS?
But we cannot identify like that. So application team should inform us.
Okay.
Application team will inform this VM is running with sensitive application, which should not be motion here and there. Can you restrict it? So at that time we can set it.
Okay.
If you want to disable or set a specific DRS level on a particular VM, one or couple of VMs, you can follow this navigation. All other VMs will be vMotion here and there with the DRS fully automation, except this one or two VMs. Okay, they will be always there until you manually migrate them. Okay. Any other question? Understood DRS? Very, very important for interview point of view only. So they will be asking what is DRS, how it works, why we need DRS, what are DRS automation levels, what is the difference between each of them. I want to disable DRS on only one particular VM. Initially, we will say DRS is a cluster level feature. Then he will smartly will ask, I want to restrict only one virtual machine, which doesn't support vMotion. How to restrict? Okay, kind of questions they will ask. If there are many virtual machines which doesn't support vMotion, so we'll create a separate cluster for that. Fine. Next is DRS rules. Very, very important again. We'll see. Let's say there are two virtual machines. Dependent on each other. These two virtual machines dependent on each other. That means the application which is running here is dependent on an application or database, whatever it may be running here. That means if it is on, this also should be on. For some reason, if you are powering off, this also you should take off. Okay, it's the design. For some reason, if you are powering off VM1, you need to power off VM2 as well. If your VM2 is powered on, VM1 also should be on. Both should be on or both should be off at a time. So they are running fine here. You can move vMotion here and there any number of times. vMotion not a problem here. Okay. And DRS fully automation is migrated this virtual machine from here to here. Clear? It's migrated from here to here. Now, in this case, what if this host fails? What will happen if a host fails here? What will happen to the VMs which are running here? Hmm? So, failure means unexpected failure. Do we have enough time to vMotion here? It's unexpected. Suddenly it will shut down. So, we will get chance to vMotion here or not? It's like suddenly it is going to disconnected state. Host is disconnected. When a host is disconnected, VMs will immediately go to this situation. We can't vMotion. It's not a planned activity. If it is planned activity, we can vMotion. It's not planned. It's unexpected failure. If a host fails, what will happen to the VMs running on it? They will shut down. Okay, and will restart here later with HA. That's why HA we have, right? We have HA also. If a host fails, VMs will be restarted by HA. But it will take some time. So when a host is failed, V2 is powered off. But V1 is still running. V1 is powered on and running. V2 is powered off. Clear? But as per our design, both should be running or both should be powered off. Clear? But one is off, one is on. We are not meeting the design requirements now. Okay. To avoid that, there is DRS rules. First thing is affinity. Keep virtual machines always together. That means V1 and V2 will be placed here and they will be tied with a rule. Okay. Other VMs, if needed, DRS fully automation, it can pick any other VM and migrate here and there, but not these VMs. These VMs are tied with a keep together rule, which is called affinity. They will be always on the same host. They will never migrate. If you manually migrate also, they will not move. If you DRS fully automation also, will not touch these VMs. They will be always here. So if host is fine, VMs also will be running. That's what we wanted. If host is dead, both will power off. That is okay. Both are powering off at a time. It's fine. We can achieve this goal with respect to with the help of DRS affinity rule. It's like friends. They will be always together on the same host. Okay. Very common interview question. They will be asking what are DRS rules and how they work. Okay. Next rule is, next situation is like this. There is one very critical application for the business, but it supports vMotion. Very critical application, important application for the company, but it supports vMotion. You can vMotion here and there any number of times, not a problem. But it should be always running. Okay. very critical for the business, but you can vMotion in here and there. But when it is very critical, we will not depend on one single virtual machine. We will make a clone of it and hand over it to the application team. What they will do? They will do application level clustering. Okay, not VM level, it's application level clustering. They will log into this application and enable clustering. It will become primary and it will become secondary. Both will be running. In case of any problem on the primary machine, secondary will become primary and applications will start functioning from this location. Okay, this will become primary and applications will function from here immediately. That's their intention. That means if one is on and running, another one can be sleep. It's not like power off, can be sleep. If it is sleep, it should be on and running, vice versa. If it is on, this can be fine. If there is any problem, it should immediately take care of this application. That's what coming to that point. Okay. That is the design. Okay. But you can vMotion here and there any number of times. Now, let's say there are two virtual machines running on the same host. Let's say V3 and V4 should not be running on the same host. So for DRS fully automation, they brought these two virtual machines together here. Now, if this host is failed, both will power off. But our design, we are not meeting the requirements here. Both are off now. But it should not be like this. They spend so much money to run these applications always. But now both are down. Fine. Both virtual machines are down now. That will impact customer business. To avoid that, we can apply DRS anti-affinity. That's why second rule they have called anti-affinity. Separate virtual machines. Always these two virtual machines will be placed on different hosts. They will never come together. It will be like this and they will be tied with the away rule. They will never come together. Even if you try to vMotion here, it will not happen. DRS fully automation also, it will not touch these VMs. Understood? Even if you manually do, it will not happen. It will fail. DRS fully automation also, it will not touch these virtual machines. They will be always on the different hosts. If this host fails, V3 is down. Let's say this is V3 and this is V4. If host 2 is down, V3 will power off, but V1 will be up and running. And if this host is failed, this VM will be down and this VM will be up and running. Fine? Clear? So we can achieve our design requirements. One will be up and one will be available. So for this we can place anti-affinity rule, which will separate the virtual machine. So go to the cluster, configure tab, VM or host rules, add. Here name we can give anything like, let's say app, DB or whatever it is. Here there will not be like affinity or anti-affinity, the meaning will be there. Keep virtual machines together or separate virtual machines. Select keep virtual machines together and it should be enabled. Click on plus add. Select the two VMs which you want to apply the rule. The rule is created now. Configure VM and host rules. Here is the rule. Rule is about keeping the virtual machines always together. Rule is enabled. These are the two VMs part of it. If you want to add more VMs into that rule, click on add, select whatever the VM that you want to add into this rule. Clear? Select. Anti-affinity, the same way. app to app. We can give any name. Just I'm writing app to app. Separate virtual machines. Select the two virtual machines. I don't want to place these two VMs always together. Okay. They should be always on a different host. You can see. If you want to remove a VM, you can click on remove also. There should be at least two VMs, so we'll add one more VM and we get. Okay, select this one and we can click remove if you want. Fine. So rules are important: affinity and anti-affinity. Two VMs, if they are dependent on each other, affinity rule we will apply. If they are one is primary, another one is secondary. Okay, then one is backup of another one, we will apply anti-affinity rule. So cluster configure VM/host rule, add, enter name, select affinity or anti-affinity. Click on OK. So if you want to create a rule, DRS rule, we can select together or separate rule here. DRS is load balancing feature. If a host is running out of memory and CPU, it will try to vMotion from highly utilized host to the less utilized host. To give control on the vMotion, VMware has given three automation levels: manual, partial, and fully. Manual, it's almost like DRS is off only. It will not. So it will not vMotion here and there. We have to manually vMotion here and there. Okay. Partial automation, cluster will calculate the resource utilization and it will give recommendations to migrate here and there. Okay. That will be our choice to migrate here and there. Then fully automation, cluster will automatically vMotion here and there whenever it is needed. Any VM it can migrate. And if you have a dependency on each other, if they both should be on the same host always, we apply affinity. Not only two VMs, we can have multiple VMs also. 10 VMs also we can create an affinity rule. But anti-affinity, separate virtual machines. If we want to create two separate DRS rule with two VMs, we should have two hosts. If there are three VMs, we want to create anti-affinity, we need to have three hosts. One VM will be on one host. Okay, we need to have three hosts. If you want to create 10 VMs with anti-affinity in the same group, you need 10 hosts. Okay, because they will be placed separately. Here, okay. But affinity to all VMs together only, right? And even if there are two hosts, we can place 10 VMs together on the same rule. 10 VMs అయినా ఒకే host మీద ఉండేటట్టు affinity rule apply చేయొచ్చు. Because it will be on any one of the hosts, right? So that's fine. But anti-affinity, they will be separated. We need multiple hosts if you have multiple VMs. But normally, maximum two only will be there. More than two will not be there in a single anti-affinity. If there are other two VMs, that we will create another rule. This is one rule. This is one rule. If you want another anti-affinity, we'll create another anti-affinity with another set of VMs. Okay, like this. Two VMs will be another part of another anti-affinity rule. So any question? So you should know all the interview questions here. What is DRS? What is DRS automation levels? Difference between them, DRS rules, and how they work. Clear? Any question?